McCuistion, for over 28 years talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McCuistion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future.
Well, hi, I'm Dennis McCuistion, and I'm here with my co-host, Jim Falk. Jim, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
And we are joined by a very special individual who joined us on another program recently. Why don't you tell us who Dick Clark is and what his, let's just say, area of expertise is as it relates to this subject of ransomware, which we're going to talk about today.
Well, I will, but first I want to just tell our viewers about why this is so important. You know, it may not be at top of everyone's mind, but you can be sure that it is at your financial institution as well as your hospital. It's more than a nuisance. It's a growing business, earning millions for the bad guys, for the thieves, and it's also costing our businesses billions of dollars. And indeed, our guest, Richard Clark, has over 30 years of government service, and he was our nation's first cyber czar. Dick has published a number of books, including a wonderful thriller called Pinnacle Event, and his most recent publication, now available in paperback, is called The Fifth Domain. Dick, it's great to see you. You and I know each other because of our both close affiliation with the Middle East Institute, where you're chairman.
And what are we talking about? We're talking about somebody sneaking a program into your network, and then that program runs amok and encrypts everything. Well, you say, well, it's good to have encryption, isn't it? Yes, it's good if you can decrypt it and use your data. But what happens here is your own network is encrypted and you can't get to the data. You can't use anything on your network. All your machines are just useless pieces of metal. And then you get a message, maybe in a fax or in some other way, saying, we'll sell you the key. We'll sell you the decryption key so you can get your network back to normal. Just send us $50,000 in Bitcoin to this anonymous address. That's what ransomware is. And as you suggested, it's the pandemic on its own, all across the world, particularly in the United States. And it's earning billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, for criminals, most of whom we think are in places like Russia.
So let me be precise, though, or ask you to explain this. Is it really just encrypting the data and holding on to it, kidnapping it, or are they hacking it and selling the data to someone else?
Usually what they do, initially they just encrypted the data and said, pay us and you'll get it, your access to your network back. Now what they're doing, because some people didn't pay, now what they're doing is they're getting in, they're stealing data from your network without your knowing it, copying it. And then they send you a message. Then they encrypt your data. Then they send you a message saying, Jim, we'll give you your network back. We'll give you the key to decrypt it if you pay us. If you don't pay us, not only will you not get the key to decrypt it, but we'll take all of your information that we stole from you and we'll post it on the internet for everybody to read. That's a much bigger incentive to pay up.
I would say that's a huge incentive. And speaking of huge, and I just noticed this, and I don't know the Cybersecurity Ventures group, but they say that in 2019, that the cybercrime losses, not just in ransomware, but other cybercrime losses, were $3 trillion worldwide and would go to $6 trillion by 2021. First of all, Dick, can that be true?
Well, we don't really know. When people use numbers like that, they're estimating, they're guessing, they're counting the downtime, the cost of downtime. They're paying out the cost of repairing the systems and getting them back to order. They're also including the cost of intellectual property theft and imputing a cost to that. So those numbers are scary. They may be right, but there's really not enough detail behind them to know. What we do know is that ransomware alone is a big business because insurance companies that write cyber insurance are paying out hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's beginning to hurt them, and they're beginning to increase their rates.
How do you know if you have been attacked, that the person who has attacked you has some code of ethics? Because I remember hearing you in another interview talk about how, yes, you should pay up because they know that if they don't de-encrypt your data, then they won't be able to get money from anybody else.
Well, you know, criminals have reputations to maintain too. And so there's honor among thieves, I guess, up to a point. If you pay up, almost every time we've seen people pay up, they get their network back. Because the criminals don't want to have a reputation of lying. If everybody thinks the criminals are lying and you won't get your network back, no one's ever going to pay them. And their whole scheme operates on people paying them. Now, my advice is not necessarily to pay up. It's a question of, do you have backup that's clean? Or did they get into your backup and infect that too? How quickly can you get that backup running? And if you do get that backup running, will they just do it to you again? Or can you fix whatever it was, the means that they got into you? How important is it for you to get back up quickly or not? It's a whole series of questions that I ask my clients when they've been hit by ransomware. Often, however, we end up saying, pay up.
Well, one of the things that's obviously exacerbated the problem is so many people now working from home, working remotely. They don't have the kind of security that they had before. And he said the second thing is that, frankly, the level of ransomware sophistication has significantly increased as well. Your thoughts?
I think both things are true. We all shifted to work from home quickly without a plan to do so securely. And we're catching up, trying to make that work from home situations more secure. But yeah, the sophistication of the attacks is getting better and better. Basically, what they do most of the time is what we call phishing. They send you an email to you by name, and they really make it look like it's someone you know. So Dennis, you might get an email from Jim at Yahoo, and you might think, oh, I didn't know Jim had a Yahoo account. Click. And it turns out Jim doesn't have a Yahoo account. Somebody made one to impersonate Jim. And then you click on it, it's just garbage. What you don't know is when you clicked on it, something dropped from that email onto your computer. And now it's spreading rapidly throughout your computer and anything attached to your computer. And it's encrypting it so that in a second or two, you won't be able to use it.
Dennis, you talk about just how many people are doing this, but what in the sophistication, but on the other side, I read in Dick's book that you can buy some of the software you need for as little as $500. So any petty criminal could buy the software if they know how to use it, and then we're all in trouble. Is that not right, Dick?
Yeah, you can go into, if you know where to go on the internet, you can buy these attack tools. You don't have to be a super geek. You don't have to be a coder. You don't have to know computer science. You can buy weapons and just point and click.
So we have just a minute or two left. Tell our viewers what are maybe the 3 top ways they can protect themselves. You've talked about backup, having an early backup, but what are some of the others?
Well, I think the backup is key. Don't just have backup. Have several backups because they may have gotten into your backup. So have 1 month, 2 months, 3 months old, and disconnect them from your system. Demount them, unplug them. Have a hard drive that's 3 months old with the key software on it. That's the best thing you can do. But after that, prevent phishing. And that's difficult. But you have to teach employees how to see a phishing email that looks like it's from somebody they know. Not click on any attachments. Not click on anything that they didn't expect to get. And sometimes if somebody in the company sends them something, pick up the phone and call that other person and say, did you really send this to me? I know that sounds cumbersome, but you're betting the company. You're betting hundreds of millions of dollars by not doing that.
Well, I've seen that in my own, at the World Affairs Council. People know I travel, and my CFO has received emails saying, I need you to send me $5,000 right away. And it's very hard. I mean, you really have to look at who sent that email to be sure.
That's right. And pick up the phone and call them and ask them. That's the best way.
Well, Dick, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your expertise. We appreciate all the things you've done for the country, as well as in your own particular client base. And of course, as Jim mentioned earlier, with the Middle East Institute. So thank you very much again, and let us know how we can help you.
Thank you very much.
And Dick, thank you. And I hope you'll write another novel soon.
There's one in the works, Jim.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
There's no shortage of material, I'm quite sure.
Katy Montgomery is the Executive Vice President for Corporate Affairs at Cyber Defense Labs, a cybersecurity firm that helps companies identify and reduce cyber risk. Prior to joining the private sector, Ms. Montgomery spent 8 years in the federal government, including serving as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and she also worked at the White House. Katy, it's great to see you.
Jim, it's great to be with you. Thank you.
I wonder if you might clarify for me, because there's so many terms that we hear about, what specifically is ransomware?
Well, ransomware is really a malicious form of software that can enter into your system, affect your computer network, and really deny any access to the data or network operations that take place until a ransom is paid. And unfortunately, it can come across through a variety of different paths, but at the end of the day, it's really locking up your business operations, denying that access until you've paid the ransom that has been demanded by a criminal or other hacker or other form of attack.
So can I assume that once I've paid the ransom that the data is mine and it has not been sold to someone else, or might that happen?
No, when you're offered the opportunity, when you witness that you've been victim of a ransomware attack, the ransom, the perpetrator wants you to pay the ransom, but you have no guarantee, one, that you're going to get the data back, two, that you're going to get it back with integrity, and that the data is going to be accurate and in the same form that you received it, and that they haven't already published it or sold it to another third party for whatever financial gain that they can make above and beyond the ransom that you've paid.
You know, when I first started looking at this, I saw that, or assumed rather, that it was mostly large corporations that would be hit by this. But then I learned that it's a lot of municipal governments, state governments, and that seems to be increasing. What's the motivation for that?
Well, unfortunately, you're right. I think ransomware can really target organizations of every size, small, medium, and large businesses, and really across every sector. And for a state and local government, you've seen evidence of this probably about a year ago, where a number of counties, even in the state of Texas, became victims of ransomware. And there was only one, I think, that had proactively planned and prepared for this type of incident and was able to withstand and not have a complete shutdown of all operations and restore in a timely way. I think there's different motivations that can target state and local governments, whether an actor is simply pursuing financial gain because they know that a state and local government can't be without the ability to provide services to its citizens, or maybe there's a political motivation. And obviously, as we're in an election environment right now, there could be a number of motivations by potential attackers to target those organizations and sow distrust and concern with the way that the state and local governments are operating.
So what do we do if it happens to one of us? And I don't mean a large company, but let's say a doctor or a teacher or a retired person.
Well, honestly, the first thing that you should do is be able to have a plan in place so that you're not put in that position to start with, that you're not at the whim of these criminals that are holding your data for ransom. And so there are very cost-effective things that can be done to put a plan in place so that you're prepared for what you would do if an incident like this occurred. There's security protocols that you can do to really assess your environment, determine if you have the right plans, policies, procedures in place to adequately protect your business operations, the data you possess, not only from a corporate sensitive business environment, but also the data you possess on your customers. If you think about auto dealerships as an example, they're doing transactions more and more frequently online, especially right now as we think about the pandemic environment that we're operating with. They hold customer information in their service center. They're dealing with financial and leasing and credit information, on the financial service side of the house. They're learning information about their customers through their websites and online sales. All of that is sensitive information that can be sold and used for financial gain by criminals. And so they have to be prepared for what those operations look like. Do I have the adequate protections in place? And honestly, it's very expensive and resource intensive to do this on your own. So you need to proactively identify a trusted partner, an expert, to help you think through, where are my critical business priorities and what do I need to protect as a priority in that environment?
Well, let's stay with this example of the auto dealership. What obligation does the owner of that dealership have to inform his customers that he's been hit?
Well, you have the opportunity to inform, and I think you see notices from companies all the time, because this is a frequent occurrence in our life, that your information may have been accessed. It doesn't mean that it's been compromised or sold, but there's certainly protections that you can put in place as a consumer to follow up and see if there's any further damage that comes from that incident. There are industry standards for payment card information, or if you're in the health sector, that are very important, that you could be violating if you don't take the right course of action following a breach. So
I am legally required to do something.
Yes. But also, I think from an organization point of view, whether you're an auto dealership or healthcare provider or others, many businesses today rely on third parties to help process information, whether it's to process their own company information from an HR and payroll perspective, or even to process customer information. And I think too often today, for rightful business purposes, you enter into these third-party partnerships and companies aren't doing the due diligence. They're just making the assumption that security comes with that chain of custody. And it's not quite there to the degree that it is. And a company needs to be able to ask questions, understand if that third party has had a security assessment done, and whether their security standard is the same as that auto dealership or that healthcare practice or the manufacturing company, and that chain of custody on where those interactions remain secure and doesn't leave you open to vulnerabilities.
There was an article that appeared in New York Times this past September by David Sanger, who is the New York Times national security correspondent. And it was really quite striking about the number of municipalities that had been hit by ransom. And also some of the precincts, or rather, I probably shouldn't say precincts, but a company in particular that was responsible for aggregating voting data. How concerned are you that our whole electoral process may in some way be at risk?
Well, I think as we've witnessed over the past couple of years, that our electoral process does remain a target. And whether it is, I think just even the fear, the lack of confidence, the loss of trust in those services can cause harm in our communities. I think when you look at these municipalities that are coming under ransomware attack, and we've seen several examples over the last year or so, it also creates a disruption to other emergency services, whether it's their 911 system or their ability to deliver critical services to the communities that they serve. And so, just like any other risk, whether you're a state and local government at a corporate level, and you look across the potential risk that can disrupt your business operations, you need to think about cybersecurity as a critical risk, just like you would from a financial perspective or a legal perspective, and really invest the time to be proactive, understand the environment that you're working in, and take the time to proactively assess and put in place the right security policies, plans, and procedures, bring in the right resources, whether you do it in-house or as a trusted partner working by your side, so that you're constantly touching this, assessing it, and making sure that we have confidence in the plans that we have put in place to prevent these types of attacks from happening.
Katy, there's been such a proliferation over the last few years of companies that put up a shingle and say, we can provide cybersecurity for you. How can the average consumer, again, a relatively small proprietor of a small business owner, how can they find the right company?
Well, they really have to do the due diligence. And within the cybersecurity industry, it can be very siloed. A lot of companies will only work on a specific single solution to the problem. You know, they help you when a breach has happened, they'll come in, they'll do the forensics report and tell you what went wrong, leave a report on your desk. And as a small and medium-sized business, what do you do with this? How do you prioritize? Where do you start? And so one of the things that we do at Cyber Defense Labs is we truly built a company to be able to help our client partners from end to end, whether it's before a breach and they want to proactively assess their environment and put in the right protocols and procedures in place so that they remain protected, whether it's helping them manage and monitor and be able to quickly detect threats in real time, 24 hours a day, or if they are faced with a cyber incident, you know, who is the expert partner that you can turn to really, who has the experience with these types of crises that can walk you through how to make these decisions and what's in the best interest of your company. So you need to do the due diligence and find a partner that understands your business environment. And the one thing I would tell companies to look at is to really align your information security with your business priorities. You want to know where your most critical operations are. What can I absolutely not live without? And that's where you prioritize your security. If you don't have them aligned with each other, you know, and you look at it as just an operational issue, I think you're constantly going to be playing catch up. And when you get breached after you've spent a lot of money buying bells and whistles to plug certain security gaps, you lack that holistic approach across the entire company and the ability to hold your partners accountable to help reduce that risk.
And I guess one thing that is important, you have to realize what it would cost to recreate your data, so it's better to pay the money up front.
I think that's something that companies grapple with every day, right? So from a law enforcement perspective, no one wants to reward the bad guys. They don't want them to get the ransomware. That just incentivizes them to keep doing it. But in reality today, businesses are faced with a very uncomfortable decision. Do they pay the ransom because it literally will be so resource intensive if they aren't prepared, if they haven't taken the steps to map out where their data is and how it's protected and put those contingency plans in place so they're not reliant on the demands of that attacker. If they haven't taken the steps to prepare, a lot of them will pay the ransom just because it takes so much money, time, and resources to rebuild that entire IT infrastructure. And honestly, they may not be able to restore the data that they had in that system to begin with. Just as another example, we've worked with law firms and other small businesses that have been, looked at this as simply an IT issue and have been the victims of ransom over and over again until they finally realized, you know, we really need a cybersecurity expert to come in, not replace our IT system, but to work with them so they can prioritize and be able to quickly detect where those threats are happening, isolate them, contain them, and let us remediate and fix that problem before it does really significant harm.
So who negotiates the ransom?
Well, that's where you need a trusted security partner. And we have experts on our team that have negotiated. And I think the trend that we're seeing right now is that in this current environment where many businesses have been shut down for a long time and are just trying to restore operations, it's not just the healthcare provider that can't afford to go without services or the state and local community, you know, government in that area. Most companies can't afford a disruption like this at all because they're already playing catch up with the current environment. And so those ransom fees are increasing. And like you said, they're doing more than just locking up the data, but they're publishing it and exposing, you know, your reputation and brand and your trust that you have with your customers as well. So you need somebody who understands this environment, knows these types of threats that you're facing. First and foremost, positions you not to be in this type of situation, but can really make sure that you have the right legal counsel, communication support, know how to work with law enforcement in this type of situation, and what your options are to negotiate. Sometimes this ransomware is a business and you can negotiate with these criminals just like you would in any other business transaction because of the frequency which it occurs.
So if you're a hospital here, say in Dallas, and you see that you've been attacked, do you call the FBI or do you call the Dallas Police Department, or what's the first call to law enforcement?
Yes, but hopefully that hospital is actually talking to law enforcement before an attack happens. And I think companies should be more proactive in that. You should understand what that environment's going to look like. What are the questions that law enforcement's going to want to know about this incident? And how is law enforcement going to behave and work with my employees and my leadership team when an incident occurs? What type of information will they need access to? Who will control the investigation? What other impact will this have to my organization? information. And all of that should be visible and discussed ahead of time. So not only is there efficiency in the process and effectiveness, but that you are fully aware and going into this eyes wide open, because there may be other second and third impacts that you're going to have to deal with from a stakeholder perspective.
But is it local jurisdiction, or do you contact the FBI? Do they step in? When a child is kidnapped, the FBI, at least I've seen enough movies, the FBI is always there. What happens in this case?
Yeah, I think you can immediately call the FBI and help with that. And oftentimes I think they have more experience to be able to deal with these types of incidents, and sometimes your local police department, could be, and with all due respect.
And then you have the issue, of course, is we don't know really where the threat is emanating from. It could just as easily be Russia routed through 3 or 4 countries. Absolutely.
These things are being disguised, with more sophistication, and we give them the opportunity to do so, not only to really become more sophisticated in how they target these companies and, solicit employees to click on a link and inadvertently download some type of malicious software that can lock it up, but also to hide really who's behind the attack, whether it's a criminal organization, a nation state actor. And honestly, all these resources are for hire in this type of environment and can just be conducted with more ease today than ever before.
Katie, we have just another minute or two. Is the situation going to be better or worse a year from now?
Well, we pray that it's better, but I really do think more boards, CEOs, really executives across the corporate environment are paying attention to this issue more than they have before. But it does require, a proactive approach. Again, I can't repeat it enough. Don't put yourself in the position of having to react to a crisis. Be proactive, identify a trusted partner that can help make sure that your company or your small office environment is really able to not only protect and defend against the threats that are happening today, but can withstand the unknown threats that we're going to be seeing tomorrow.
And when someone's doing their due diligence on a law firm or any type of professional firm, it seems to me that one of the first questions they should ask is, how's your cybersecurity?
I think cybersecurity is playing a bigger role across all of that, whether you're hiring a company, you're forming a third-party partnership, or even in the mergers and acquisitions space. When you're going to acquire another company, I see cybersecurity playing a bigger role, because you don't want to spend a lot of money buying a company and then coming out to find out that their IP has been completely stolen the year before and those security gaps haven't been closed.
Thanks a lot, Katie.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
For more information, call 214-750-5157 or email nickyn@nickymcquistion.com. Visit our website at www.mcquistiontv.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at www.twitter.com/McQuistionTV or download McQuistion TV video podcast on iTunes.